Do you have a message to share with the world, but you're unclear on exactly what that message is? You're sharing content, but the content you share feels a bit random, like it doesn't have a common theme or it doesn't have a core message that you are really backing. Well, in this video, I'm going to help you get clear on your life's message so that way you are leading the movement that you are meant to lead. Because I know that you are not just making content for a moment, you are making it for a movement to leave a legacy. So I'm going to help you develop that clarity through using insights from this book by Rick Warren. It's called The Purpose Driven Life. Let me see if it'll capture. There it is. The Purpose Driven Life. Now, this is a 42-day devotional or workbook, if you will, where he talks about a different topic each chapter. And then he also gives you some reflective, insightful questions that really pulls some things out of you. So I read this book when I first came to Christ almost 2 years ago now. And it really gave insights on things like, why am I here? What is my purpose? Now, mind you, I had already been in business. I had already grown my business, and it gave some new flavors to business. And this is one of the ways that I started to restructure the way that I do business, the way that I coach, the way that I teach. And so now that I go back to this book to reflect on and pull insights from, I'm getting new revelations because we are never the same person. Who we are when we first read a book is never going to be the same revelations that we extract when we read that book at a later date. So I am going to pull out day 37, but I want to give you a little bit of insight on what these chapters cover. And I'll post a link in the description box so you can grab this book. But day one, for example, is it all starts with God. Day two, you are not an accident. Day eight, planned for God's pleasure. Day 10, the heart of worship. Day 11, becoming best friends with God. Day 23, how we grow. Day 25, transformed by trouble. That's a great one. Day 26, growing through temptation. Day 40, living with purpose. Day 42, one of my favorites, the people pleaser trap. So this just gives you an insight on what this book is about and how it can guide you. But I'm specifically, like I said, going to talk about day 37. And I'm going to give you some insights on questions that you can reflect on how to pull out that life's message. Now, this is something that I do with my clients. We dive deep into understanding your life's message. It's not just about your skills and your knowledge. It's about using your spiritual gifts, and it's about taking your story and turning that into a business, and not just any business, but a business that leaves a legacy and helping you create content that also leaves a legacy. So, one of the questions that he takes you through is documenting what your life was like before you met Jesus. How did you realize you needed Jesus? How did you commit your life to Jesus and the difference Jesus has made in your life? So, I'm going to just give you some insight on how I've used some of these questions. So, for example, number two, how I realized I needed Jesus. I didn't know I needed Jesus. But when I reflect back on my life, I can actually recall all of the times that he's been there, he's never left, he's shown up, things that happened in my life that I could not explain, but I knew that that was him. And back then, he did not get the acknowledgement that he had deserved, but now I understand how he was always showing up, how he was always playing and pulling the strings in my life. And so I didn't realize I needed Jesus, but what I did realize is that I had this massive void where I was always looking to fill it with something. And the personal development world is a vast world, but it is not the same thing as having a relationship with Jesus who gives you insight and revelation. And so what I had was a void. And I used everything in New Age and in personal development to attempt to fill that void, but it just made that void bigger and bigger and bigger until I did meet Jesus and I realized that that void was filled. I had been spending so much time trying to fill the void instead of spending it with the one who fills it. So I didn't know I needed him. But what's great about my personal story, and probably yours too, is just how we come to understand that we did need him when he did find us. Because I wasn't looking, I didn't know, but he will always come back to find the one. He'll leave the 99 to find the one. So it's good for us to document and write down so we know what was life like before and after. That is how you can understand how to better create content that leaves a bridge for your audience. So this before and after, painting a picture with your words in your content so that your audience can follow a path or a theme and you can understand your own insights. Because it's one thing to create content. It's another thing to create content that your audience understands and sees themselves in. So having these before and afters is really important. So those are the first four questions. And then when it comes to the marketplace, there's health, wealth, and relationships. And so many of us are falling into one of those categories in the marketplace. So I want you to think right now, are you health, wealth, relationships? Where do you think your message falls? You already likely know the answer to this. If you've had a health triumph, if you have had some financial loss and now you've had a gain, if you've had something happen in your relationship, maybe you were on the verge of getting a divorce and now you and your spouse are still together. What are the areas that you have overcome, you have achieved, and now you can help others do the same? It's important to understand that every piece of thought, every piece of like concept, every situation was made to guide and shape you. All your thoughts, all the concepts that you've thought about, all the ways that you've navigated that challenge now becomes the classroom for other people to learn from because you've already gone through the classroom. So here is one of the quotes he actually has in the book. He says, while it is wise to learn from experience, it is wiser to learn from the experience of others. So there's proof that we learn from other people. There's proof that other people have a way of explaining something that they want to learn from you. You have a way of explaining things that people want to learn from you and you alone. Even though other people might be helping others with the exact same thing, there's a way that you say it, the way that you do it, that really lands. So let's just dive into these questions. First one is, what has God taught me from failure? So what is a failure that you have had in your life? And I don't really see failure maybe the other ways that people do, but I see failure as more so a lesson, something that may not have worked out the way I wanted it to, but it always ends up working out. Well, in that interim where I didn't get what I wanted the way I wanted it, what did I learn from that? So, what has God taught me about failure? The next question he asks, what has God taught me from a lack of money? So if you are in the financial space and you help people with that, what is it that you had to learn? Write down your personal story, your testimony, the processes and thoughts that you had to start thinking. Write that all down. And from there, you're going to understand what is that common theme? What is that thing you always keep going back to? One of my main messages is that you can reinvent yourself as many times as you need. And this all boils down to now having a renewed mind in Christ and understanding that that is the only mind that I needed, but I didn't know. And I had to reinvent myself multiple times over in the business world to be able to even get to this point, to where I am right now. And so we start to realize that there is a common theme, but we got to spend time understanding what that is. And so when I'm working in the 9 to 5 world, I used to always dream about being full time in business. And when that actually happened, I was like, what are the steps I took? What are these processes? What did each pivot happen? Or what did each pivot that happened? What did that teach me? Because that's what I come back and I now teach here on my channel. And so this boils down to what are the things that have happened for you? What are these milestones, these checkpoints, and understanding what that is. And when you understand what that is, now you have a message to share. You start molding it and forming it. All right, number 3, what has God taught me from pain or sorrow or depression? Is there something that's mental health related that you've gone through? Is there something that you feel that maybe you would not have gotten through, but you did. And now you're like, I need everybody to know about this. That is so important because that is a pain to triumph story. And there's a lot of people right now that need exactly that. They need your story. Next, what has God taught me through illness? This is a big one. There's a lot of people right now struggling with their health. And I'm not just talking to lose weight. I'm talking they've got autoimmune diseases with emotions stored up in their body. I'm talking about having negative recurring thoughts that consistently feed their poor habits of not being able to take care of themselves. So, what has God taught you through illness? What has God taught me through waiting? Isn't that a great question? Is there a moment where you felt like you were waiting on God, but what you realize is that God is waiting on you? He's waiting on you to move. He's waiting on you to speak. He's waiting on you to rise up and stand up and start speaking your message. He's waiting on you to be in motion so that He has a business to steer, because God can only steer us when we're in motion. And so, what has He taught you through this waiting process of desiring some kind of a goal that He finally delivered for you? What did you learn during that process? What were those pivots like? I felt like I had a lot of moments of waiting, a lot of moments of hoping and some moments of wishing. And what I realized is that it was about being anchored. It wasn't about hustling. It wasn't about grinding. It wasn't about trying to create an outcome. We can't create outcomes. If we could create an outcome, we'd all be living on a yacht or living in a mansion on a yacht, just doing something that you really desire to do. You would just go like this and have exactly what you wanted the way that you wanted it. But we don't control outcomes. It doesn't mean you don't live the best life you are living right now, but it means if you could control an outcome, your bank account would be 10 times fatter, right? Your bank account would be different than it is right now. And so we don't control outcomes. We do control input. We do control the amount of effort that we put towards pursuing our purpose and becoming the best people that God created us to be. Okay, the next one. What has God taught me through disappointment? Where is a time that something happened and you were so disappointed, only to find out that that disappointment was the exact thing that needed to happen for you to discover your purpose, for you to be more aligned with Him, for you to actually have the thing that you wanted? Because the thing that you thought you wanted didn't happen, so you were disappointed, but it led you to actually getting what you wanted. And so understanding that these are all the pivots, these are all the around the corners of your story. And when you can understand these crevices of your story, you're going to have a much better time speaking it and articulating it and communicating that in your content. Whether you create written content or you create video content, you're going to have a much better time expressing that message that's inside of you to other people for them to understand. Okay, what have I learned from my family, my church, my relationships, my small groups? Here's my favorite, and my critics. What have you learned? What have you learned from all of that? There's so much that happens from family, the way that you grew up. What was that mentality like? Did you hear phrases like money doesn't fall from trees? Did you hear phrases like, you got to work hard and get a good job or get a good education so you can get a good job? Is that what you heard? And is that what you pursued? And now you're like, I don't like that life. I remember waking up one day thinking like, this cannot be my life. I just knew it. I graduated with my doctorate in physical therapy and I was like, this isn't it. This is just not it. This is not how I thought my life was going to be, and that set out my journey on changing that. So, what have you learned from your church? What are the people that you're surrounded by? What are some things that you've gathered, that you've observed, that has shaped the way that you live? Your relationships. What has being in communion with certain people really shown you? What are those lessons? What are those insights? The small group of friends that you might have, and your critics. What have your haters taught you? The people who've hated on you, the people that don't want to see you win, the people that smile in your face and then stab you behind your back, the people that say that, hey, you're never going to make it, or even the people that say, how's that small business going? Right? It's like what do your critics have to say? What has that taught you? How did that really anchor you? I was bullied as a kid, terribly, to the point where my mom had to actually come to the school one day and say something about it and advocate. And then I got made fun of. Oh, you brought your mommy to school. It was just this endless cycle of bullying. And I remember like crying so many days just because of how I felt. But those are stories now that I reflect on. And yeah, those were critics from my childhood, but those were moments of shaping me. Those are moments of me going after the things that I want now. So don't just think about critic in your immediate circle in your adult life. Think about critic from your childhood. So those are the questions that he has posed. And I really encourage you to focus on those, write out your story, write out these lessons so that way you can see them tangibly. It's not enough to just keep your story in your head and create random content. Content is honestly used as a marketing tool. It is a conversion system that will lead into sales to sell your programs, your courses, your books, your whatever it is you sell. But you want to be able to have very strategic content, which means you got to be clear on your life's message. You got to be clear on the story you're sharing. And you can't only just be clear about it, you got to be embodied in it. Yes, it's your story, but the way that you tell it, the way that you speak about it, the way that you deliver the lessons, the way that you deliver the message has to be embodied. It has to come from a space of deep conviction, especially when you're helping someone to transform their life and get a solution. So, I'll put a link, like I said, in the description box for you to grab this book. It is one of my favorites. I refer to it over and over and over again. I highly recommend it. I encourage you to keep getting clarity on your story. Follow through with this book and these questions and these exercises. I look forward to seeing your message out into this world, and I will see you in another video. Bye.